Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome once again to our virtual classroom. Today, we have an interesting lesson. It's really just a continuation of what we were doing before the break. However, I don't expect you to remember exactly everything that we were going through. I trust that as we go through this lesson, some of these things are going to come back to mind. But really, this lesson is designed to just be an introduction into how to deal with equations that have to deal with multiplication and division as well. And so I'm just going to go through the assignment and the different scenarios that are posted throughout or that are given to us throughout the assignment. Um, so that we can see how we can apply multiplication equations and the like. To begin, the assignment today is right here. This is just a sample of how I would do it in my notebook. It is lesson 14-1, multiplication equations. Here are the page numbers. As far as the actual numbers that we will be doing, we're going to be doing numbers 1, number 5 through 8, so 5, 6, 7, and 8, and then number 10. Feel free to pause this as you copy this down. And this isn't considered a lesson. Tomorrow we'll have actual notes for multiplication equations. However, for now, let's just prime ourselves, prepare ourselves to look at these different equations. All right, so let's go ahead and begin by reading the paragraph above number 1, which reads, in 2010, Americans generated about 250 million tons of trash and recycled and composted nearly 85 million tons of the trash they produced. According to the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, Americans recycled and composted about 1.5 pounds of the average 4.5 pounds of waste produced per person per day. That is a lot of information. And for the purposes of today's assignment, I really want us to focus just on this down here. All right. Where it says Americans, meaning you and I. So people in America typically produce 4.5 pounds of waste. That means any boxes, cans, trash, toilet paper, anything. All right. All of that put together on average, meaning the general thing for each person would be 4.5 pounds. If you were to weigh it. All right. Now, some of that might be recycled or recyclable. That would be 1.5 pounds of the total, which is 4.5. That's what it means by Americans recycled and composted about 1.5 pounds. But just note that this is the total amount. That's recyclables and non-recyclables. And so we're going to use that information to fill out this table. So in your notebook, I do want you to copy this table. And let's just determine how much trash would be generated by each one of these days. So in day 1 would be 4.5 pounds. By day 2, that would be 9 pounds. How did I get that? Well, you can either add 4.5 because it's another day, or you can just do 4.5 times 2 times the day, right? Uh, by day 3, that would be 13.5 because we're adding another 4.5. That's 3 sets of 4.5 or 4.5 times 3, doing that same thing 3 times, 4.5, 4.5, 4.5. By day 4, that would be 18. Day 5, that would be 22.5. Day 6, that would be 27. And day 7 would be 31.5. Again, following this same pattern where I'm basically multiplying 4.5 times the day, or I can just use a variable. I can use the letter D. 4.5 times D will give me the total amount of trash generated. All right, that is true for any of these. 4.5 times 6 should give you 27. So what is the pattern that we see here? So the simplest way to describe the pattern is I'm just adding 4.5 plus 4.5 plus 4.5 plus 4.5. Now, a simpler way of saying that is really we are just multiplying the total amount generated per day times the number of days. That is the pattern that we see here, because when we're doing the same thing over and over again, in this case, adding 4.5, whenever we're adding over and over again, multiple times, that is multiplication. That is where we get multiplication from, right? So this is the pattern that we see. And I know that we don't have to do number 2, 3, or 4 on Schoology, but on number 5, it does ask for an expression. So really, we're taking 4.5 and we're multiplying it times the day. And if you remember, whenever we are multiplying a number times a variable, we can just write it without the multiplication symbol. That is redundant. You just do 4.5d, and that would be the answer to 5. In other words, instead of writing this huge table up here, all you have to do is say, well, just do 4.5 and multiply that times the day, and that'll give you the amount of trash generated. That's pretty much it. All right, so for number 1, we filled out the table. For number 5, we translated this table into a very simple expression, 4.5, which is the total amount generated of trash, recycling and non-recycling put together, times the day. So if you think about it, if I asked you, well, how many days did it take you to produce 9 pounds of trash? Well, we just look at the table. 9 pounds of trash was the product of 4.5 times how many days was that times 2, right? If I asked you, well, how many days did it take to produce 18 pounds of trash? Well, again, it would be 4.5 times the day. And how many days did it take to do 18? Well, that would be 4, right? Well, what if I asked you, well, how many days did it take to do 27 pounds? Well, let's look at the table. 4.5 times how many days did it take to do 27? We see that that would be 6. Okay, where are you going with this, Mr. Lewis? Well, when you look at number 6, they're asking us, well, how many days did it take? However, they ask for 279 pounds. In other words, let's look at our table and see how many days did it take for us to produce 279 pounds. Well, when I look at the table, I see that my table is too small. I need to keep going and keep adding 4.5 until I get 279. Or, ladies and gentlemen, we can simply apply what we have learned about equations. All right? We can apply what we've learned about equations and simply solve for the d. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, remember that equations are simply scales, where one side of the equation, in this case the left side, has to equal the same thing as the right side. They're balanced. Okay, I don't know what d is, but when I multiply d times 4.5, it is the same thing as 279. All right? Well, let's follow the same pattern that we did before the break. Let us isolate the d. Let us just get to the point where d is by itself. What is keeping d from being by itself? Well, up here, it is not by itself because I am multiplying d times 4.5. The question is, well, how can I isolate the d? How can I get rid of this times 4.5? Well, when I was adding, I would do the opposite of addition. The opposite of addition is subtraction. So here I am multiplying. The opposite of multiplication, ladies and gentlemen, is division. So I am going to divide by 4.5. Because what is 4.5 divided by 4.5? It's 1. And 1 times d is just going to be d. So that's it. I've isolated the d by doing that. However, whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I'm going to do 279, divide that by 4.5 as well, and that's going to give me whatever d is equal to. So let me work that out. We have 279, and that's going to be divided into 4.5. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that we do not like decimals on the outside. On the inside, it doesn't matter, but when we have a decimal on the outside, we have a problem with that. So let's move the decimal over to make this into a whole number. Now it's a 45, but I must do the same thing with the decimal in the 279. Move it over once. Now it's 2,790. All right, let's work this out. 45 cannot go into 2 or 27, but it does go into 279 6 times because 45 times 6 is 270. Let us subtract. 279 minus 270 is 9. Bring down the 0. 45 goes into 90 exactly 2 times. 45 times 2 is 90. And that means that it would take me 62 days to produce 279 pounds. Now imagine if I had gone on my table and done 62 rows. That would be ridiculous. It's so much easier to just know how to solve an equation. And ladies and gentlemen, that's why it's important to know how to solve equations. Let us look at a slightly different scenario. Remember that 4.5 was the amount of trash, the total amount of trash, meaning recyclables and non-recyclables, things that can be composted and things that could not. However, the things that cannot be recycled, those things just go to the landfill. All right, so the amount of trash that the average American sends to the landfill each month. Uh-oh. Did I do this wrong? No, I did right. Okay. Is the difference between the total amount of trash they collected and the amount they recycle. So in other words, we're going to do the total amount of trash, which is the 4.5, minus whatever has been recycled, which if we remember from number 1, we're recycling 1.5. So 1.5. So that's going to be 3 pounds per day. 3 pounds of trash per day. So that's how much actually goes to the landfill. So just know that we're going to be using that. So instead of using the expression 4.5 times the day, we're going to use the expression 3 pounds, and that's really 47a, 3 pounds times the day. That is my new algebraic expression, 3D. Instead of 4.5D, we're going to use 3D. That's it. That's 4a. 4b. Now, very similar to number 6. They're saying, well, how many days would it take for you to produce 93 pounds to go to the landfill? So basically, for 3b, our scenario here is going to be 3d is equal to 93. This is the equation that we need to solve, and that is the answer to B. And in C, we're actually going to solve it. If you are lost, just copy that down and let's just solve this equation. Let's at least see if we can solve this equation. 3d is equal to 93. All right, remember we need to isolate the variable. We want the d to be by itself. It is not by itself right now. Right now we're multiplying times 3. We don't want that. So let's do the opposite of multiplying by 3, which is divide by 3. Because 3 divided by 3 is 1, so therefore now d is isolated. But whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. 93 divided by 3. If you can't do that in your head, that's fine, but 93 divided by 3 is equal to 31. If you don't believe me, you can work it out. 93 divided by 3. Bring down the 3. 3 goes into 3 once, so it's 31. That means that it would take 31 days to produce 93 pounds of trash. So here's A, B, and C, and don't worry about D, just to check your solution. So let me slow down. So our expression was 3D. 3 pounds times the day will tell you how many pounds of trash go to the landfill every day. For B, they're asking for an equation for 93 pounds of trash. So that's where we got 3D is equal to 93. And for C, we just solved that equation. We isolated the variable with the variable here on the left side by dividing by 3. Since we're multiplying by 3, we divided by 3. And whatever you did to one side, we did to the other. So D was 93 divided by 3, which is 31. That's what we got for number 7. All right. So even if you feel like you couldn't have come up with these equations by yourself, what I want you to do is simply understand how we solved it. Once we had the equation, understand how we isolated the variable, where the opposite of multiplication is division. So we use division to isolate the variable, to get the variable by itself. Let's go ahead and do number 8, which is a totally different problem. We're no longer talking about trash. So Sherrod ordered concert tickets for himself and 5 of his friends. So that's a total of 6 people, right? 6 total people. That's all what this is saying. The total price of the tickets was $270. So all the tickets put together was $270. And it's asking how much was each ticket. In other words, we have tickets and there's 6 of them, or 6 times that ticket. And all of those tickets put together will be $270. There is my equation. Again, don't worry so much about how we got that equation. Let's just focus on solving it. Remember, we want to isolate the t. We want to isolate the variable. We want that to be by itself. It is not by itself right now because I am multiplying. So I'm going to use division because division is the opposite of multiplication. So 6 divided by 6, that is 1. So 1 times t is just t. But whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So 270 divided by 6. So let's go ahead and work that out. 270 divided by 6. 6 goes into 2 0 times, but into 27 is 4 times. 6 times 4 is 24. 27 minus 24 is 3. Bring down the 0. 6 goes into 30 exactly 5 times because 6 times 5 is 30. So that means that it would take, that each ticket would be $45. So the answer to 8 would be 45. All right, we're not doing number 9. So let's use that same, it says here to get, we can either guess for number 10, we can either guess or just use what we just learned about how to solve multiplication equations to find the variable for each one of these. So for 10a, so this is 10a, please rewrite the problem in your notebook. 14 times x is equal to 56. You can literally just go 14 times 1. Okay, that's 14. 14 times 2, that's 28. 14 times 3, etc. until you get to 56. Or you can just use the inverse operation. The opposite of multiplying by 14 is to divide by 14. So x will equal to whatever 56 divided by 14 is, which is 4. So in Schoology, just put 4. And that makes sense because if 14 times what is 56, it would be the same thing as 56 divided by 14. Same thing in 10b. Notice how in 10b we have 240 will equal to whatever 12 times a is. 12 times what is 240? Well, let's divide by 12. We divide by 12 because we want the a to be isolated. 240 divided by 12 is 2. All right. So when you do 10c, you can do that by yourself. We're asking ourselves 8 times what is equal to 72. We should be able to do that one in our heads, but it's not always going to be as clean as this, which is why tomorrow we're going to spend more time seeing, well, how can we find out what the variable has to be to get a certain product, to get a certain multiplication answer. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you found this helpful. At the very least, I just wanted you to be exposed to this before we dive in tomorrow and take some legit notes on this. All right. I will see you soon then.